or probably trying to let Zoom know that, you should still be able to have that option once you've gone into the share screen. And how many gripes about Zoom will we make before semester's end? Quite a few, probably. Okay, so yeah, I want to record this and I want to put this somewhere where it can be rewatched later, or people who don't attend can see it. So, all right. So your verticals, you might go to your corners, and you might draw some triangles around your corners really lightly on your 18 by 24 page, just to get yourself into the groove. You might put a vertical, sort of practicing that thing I'm saying about how to draw like this, like sort of moving your arm, because it'll be uncomfortable if you're not used to it to move your arm, to try to stiffly, like, oh, I can't draw a straight line. Well, I can't either. Meaning I can't put my pencil down and with making one cut, expect to make a perfectly exact straight angle line on something. I mean, I might, but I don't sort of think that that's something that I should always be able to do, and I don't think you should be able to do that. I think you should be able to work with light lines. Now, what will happen is the more you practice drawing this way is you'll get better. Like your initial marks will be better with practice, but you should never just think that, well, if I go like this and I place it here, that I will, like a CNC router, kind of perfectly, imitate. Let's leave that to the, computer-driven mechanical stuff. So maybe some vertical lines lightly, maybe some horizontal lines lightly, maybe some flirtations or dalliance at doing one of the major big shapes, but not committing to it immediately. Now, this is one of the things that I find really kind of amazing about this stuff. You've heard me talk already about how we tend to do things in drawing the hard way. There's an easier way, but that's like less comfortable. For example, when I'm telling drawing students to be relaxed, now everything else in life tells us that if we're focused and we care, that we're really uptight and we're like, oh, God damn, I got to do well, It's not true. Oftentimes in drawing, the way to get it right is to be loose, and you need to relax. And so drawing teachers are always saying, loosen up. So what I'll do is I'll try to loosen up, and I'll try to get everything going together and work the whole drawing together. You won't want to do that. You won't want to make marks around the whole page of this big 18 by 24 thing. You will want to pick the most interesting thing, start drawing it, and do it from start to finish. That's what we will want to do. But just remember, as you're doing this, I am working the whole drawing together. So I'm not only indicating placement, I'm going to be working out some angles, and I'm teaching myself in a way not to be afraid that I'm messing everything up, so much as I don't have to commit to anything now. With my network of lines, I will begin to put something. Oh, it's so important. You don't know how important it is to know that you don't get just one shot, and then if you missed, you're done. We feel like we have to do it, and I put a line there. And of course, if I do this right away, if I go like that, and I put it in there with more line weight and more pressure and all that, and I'm off, it will make it harder for me to change it, right? It will make me less inclined to do that. Whereas if I keep them light and I keep them loose, I'll be more okay with, wait, now I see this over here and I see this, that's not right. Just change it, okay? So if I do that and I go like this, which I might want to do that with a kneaded eraser or a bigger, you know, but whatever. If I do that, it's all good, okay? Now, we're not going to really believe that it's all good. We're going to be like, that's not right. I'm screwing this up. All these you don't have to think like that now. These are changeable things. This is a network and a structure of lines that I'm trying to find something. I'm trying to work out relationships. I'm trying to place things. It's all up in the air. Now, one of the things that's really great about charcoal, you can see now I'm being blocky and I'm being geometric, and this is how to freehand architectural drawing. I always, when we do like the interiors of buildings and the exteriors of buildings, I always work this way because it's unrealistic to expect us to just sort of do a window at a time and get them to all line up. You have to do like one line, because anything that's horizontal will be affected by perspective, okay? So if you're looking for what angle it is and you're going to work on that, this is the way to do it. You get these light lines, I'm getting practice in, but I'm also not committing to like, well, I get one shot and then if I get it right, then I can proceed with the next thing in my drawing. And I better get that right too, and so on, which is a much harder way to bring a drawing along. One of the great things about charcoal is that charcoal, it's even easier to believe what I'm telling you now, which is that see this as a malleable, changeable thing that is in the beginning and is under construction, okay? But we are just doing that. We are constructing. These structural lines are all often referred to as well as, what's the other term that's used a lot? Structural lines may be, there's another term anyway. And it just reflects a process of figuring it all out. Now I've got all kinds of stuff, like I can see where stuff is and where I've started. Does that mean the angles are perfect? Oh, not at all. A quick look here and I can see there's too much space, and I can see I drew that straight across. And of course, think of that as a rough cuts. If we were sculpting, you got to make big rough cuts before you can like get anything fine-tuned. Okay, so some good stuff. This ties to my next demonstration. So everybody pay careful attention to this. The only way I'm going to see something like this as a straight line, something that's round, it's going to have an ellipse. And the only way it's going to be a straight line is if I get it completely lined up with my eye level. So there is a place, if I move my head, that the bottom of it will look like a straight line. And it's when it's basically lining up with my eyes like that. Okay. Like basically I've got an axis, you know, like I've got that in front of my face. And this is not going to be a thorough perspective lecture, trust me, because I've found that that can be too much information and I want you seeing. But just know that in here is where things are hard. It's hard to see angles when they're close to your eye level. If you're looking a little under the table or you're looking down a little bit on the table, and of course there is a place you can put your head where that will line up right like that, but that is a hard place to see what the angle is. If it's way above your head, you'll get a lot of angle. And as we go down, the angles get more dramatic, and I'm sure you guys, you know what I'm talking about here. Video games have given people a great sort of understanding of this kind of thing. But it's that stuff that's close to eye level that will actually trick you. So if I'm looking way up at the ceiling and there's a light on there, my lips might be something like this, say, for the sake of an argument. If I'm looking way down on the floor, I might get an ellipse like that. And if I stand directly over top of the vinyl record album or whatever it is, the bowl, I might get a circle, but I'm going to have to be looking like dead down at it. Okay. And I have to lay down on my back and look straight up at the light on the ceiling if it's going to be like that. Any other time, it's going to become some kind of ellipse, meaning it gets compressed like that, right? So what's happening here is I've got an ellipse. And I can do this kind of stuff, light and loose, no fear of the straight line. So this is not going to bother me. And drawing through, meaning obviously I can't see both sides of it, only one. And eventually by doing that, I may find like, well, this is about how much curve I need on my object, right? But I'll draw that ellipse. And then when I think like, well, that's not too bad. That seems about right. This setup is slightly below my eye level, so it's a tight ellipse, not a wide one. But maybe something like that is okay, right? And if I can make that observation and just make that change, it's not that, it's this. You'll get fooled sometimes. You'll be like, it looks like it's going straight, or it looks like it's angling this way. But whatever you do, never let this tell you what to do. It's very easy once you've put something down to let it tell you that you have to live with it, that you have to keep it, that as if I etched a groove into my paper and now I have to follow it. Not true. And that's another one of the reasons I want you working this way is I want you to practice making change. So if I find that I had too much distance in here, if I look at that negative space and I need it to be tighter, I'm going to make it tighter. And if I find the angle was tilted too much and it's not that, it's that, I'm going to change that. And like I said last time, practicing doing that change at the beginning of my drawing is just as important as the outcome of the drawing. So on the handout that, somebody had a pile of chairs that they drew this way on. It's on page 2. I don't think any of you took about 8 or 9 folding chairs and piled them up. But you'll see that there's all those straight lines and those loose lines. They may have been working with charcoal pencils or something much softer. And then you go to the next page and there's a door handle. And the door handle is drawn in this, once upon a time we used to call this drafting or mechanical drawing, and we would actually have T-squares and tools like that. Please don't think you need a ruler, okay? Because if you try to use a ruler, you'll take one shot, you'll make them line with, you're telling yourself you can't do it, right? Keep working with these light lines and go over it and get that practice in and know that, no, I won't get it right to begin with, but I'm going to go about it this way. Because if I use a ruler, I'm just giving up on even ever being able to do it, right? I'm looking for, it's not an assist, it's like something else, right? So that while there are all these things out there, like, these templates where you can do all these different ellipses, you know what I mean? And there's all that kind of stuff. Don't look for that. Try to learn how to see it and just practice working this way. And then you can see eventually I get to a really crazy, intimidating subject like a rib cage of a skeleton. But all of those are good examples of this way of working. So the thing about ellipses and things that are round is that even up here, this may be even more subtle. It may be even tighter ellipse, but unless it's right in that one spot where it lines up with my eye level, there's probably a little bit of curvature here too. That's the nature of bottles and things like that. And if this gets above my eye level, it may curve a little bit the other way. So while I started with my blocky kind of like straight lines, everybody see how I got from like these straight lines to putting in these ellipses and adding that curvature, right? That's what's good about this is I don't have to get the perfect curvature right away. So then I look at this again and I look in here at this negative space, and where I had indicated the handle, I'm way off. I have way too much space up here. When I look at this negative shape in between the handle and the body of it, I need to come way down. So I do so. And maybe I had this going straight and maybe there's a little bit of angle to it. And so what I'm doing is I'm not only like working this out, and maybe this will be a handsome drawing and the uh, you know, things will look good because the lighter lines are not only not mistakes, but they end up being sort of embellishments or, you know, like don't worry about it too much, because once the heavier line weight comes in and more information comes in, that lighter line actually looks good instead of looking like it's not an error. It's like, you know, part of the drawing. But also I am getting good practice with this, right? And so imagine that this is a malleable, changeable thing, and you can move it and you can change stuff, and that's good. Because if you can see, oh, I see a difference, because that's what a lot of this is just as being able to distinguish differences. So if I can find that, oh, what I put there to begin with, it's not that, it needs to be this. Then so be it. And if I draw like this book and I get it pinched here, everybody pay attention to this. This is a hot tip. If I pinch here and this are closer together than over here, this is like the big thing to know about perspective without getting into a ton of stuff that will just fill up your head and probably make it harder, because there's nothing worse than learning a system and then trying to look at the world and force the world to conform to an existing system or an existing template or model you have in your head. You always want to be able to do what you see, right? So, but I know that if I do this, I'll just go ahead and tell you, if I start doing this, that can't be, because this is the part of the book that is closer to me, and this is far going back, and that's going back. And things don't get bigger as they go back in space, they get smaller. So if I see that, before I even try to get like, well, what's the exact angle of it, I know that I can't be making it wider as it goes back in space. It's got to be the other way around. So even if I'm wrong, if I do this to my book, even if I overdo it and exaggerate it, that will look believable. But if I have this getting bigger as it goes back, those lines would never converge, you know, and I've reversed the kind of rule of what perspective is about, which is that they get smaller as they recede into space. Perfect example is if I put my hand like this towards you, and then I draw my hand the same size as I expect a hand to be, I'm not going to get that sense that the hand is coming forward, because I have no foreshortening. So if I'm doing this, I've got to have things getting bigger as they come towards the viewer, right? If I think, well, the hand's not that big, or I allow myself to whatever, I may end up drawing it like it's this. But if what I'm looking at is this, it's like, well, you know, the fists and the head, that's their relationship. That's crazy. Everybody knows heads are bigger than fists. Am I making sense? Right? We got to draw what we see, not what we think. So having, again, I mean, I don't think this is looks a lot like what I did Monday, I think. So I think, has everybody got the idea, you know, of a network of light lines? And at no point feel like the beginning of the drawing is been left behind and you can't go back. You know, to go back to a light, loose network of lines, the more the better, is a good thing. I like to spend as much time in that place as I can, and I recommend you do too. We get in a big hurry to jump to the details. We get in a big hurry to get to the specific. We tend to not enjoy, and it's so funny because everything else in life, if you tell me it's the easier way, that's the way I want to do it. Everything else in life, if you tell me it takes less time, everything else in life, if you tell me it's less, you know, it's less precarious and less dangerous. So try to think about it that way. to do all the big stuff, you know, but you may look at this now and go, well, where's the beautifully rendered little thing, you know, that tells me that this is coming out good, right? That's what we have to do, is we have to suspend our desire to immediately make something, you know, like maybe I drew something like this, you know, earlier, and it only took me 10 minutes. And I did this kind of, I gave it the structural line treatment, and I did lots of ellipses on that, you know, but that was only so big and only filled so much part of the page. And so now you're telling me to spend a half hour or more than I spend. You know, I want to do an object at a time, and I want to finish it, and I want to show myself, Mullins, that this is coming out well. You know, so I want to finish an object, put some details on it that look really tasty, and I want to move on, you know, and move. But trust me on this. The whole drawing, the whole layout, all of it light, networks of lines, and then look at the spaces in between things to do all your checking and your changing and all that. That works. It may just be that it's new, right? So big things when you're working on your 18 by 24 drawing is stay in the beginning stages as long as you can. Don't be in a hurry to finish it up. Now, in most things in life, that sounds like good news to me. If somebody tells me don't be in a hurry to get to the finish, I'll be like, well, that sounds great. If somebody tells me do the big stuff first, it's easier, I'll say, well, I'll do the big stuff. If somebody tells me keep all your lines loose and they don't have to be right at first, I'll be like, well, that sounds good too. But all of these things I'm saying will be hard to do at first because we think we have to do it other ways. We think we have to finish something. We think we have to get picky right away. We've learned that our whole life. We've looked at areas that are about this big, and we've looked at areas that are like about yay big. Oftentimes we're looking at things that are only as big as, you know, the size of the fields in which we're filling in the letters, you know, or the numbers. And so all of that is very comfortable for us, you know, but draw big, do big stuff. You don't even have to mess with it at first if it's not medium-sized or bigger, right? So when I phrase it that way, it sounds like, okay, cool. I don't have to mess with that detailed stuff. It's too picky, right? Sounds good. But all my life, I've been sort of like, okay, one thing at a time, Mullins. You should hire me because I'm a detail-oriented person. You know what I'm saying, right? But there's that other cliche, which is like, I can't see the forest for the trees. That would be more in line with what I'm promoting here, which is get the whole forest. Please do not zoom in on one tree trunk or one leaf. Let's see all of it. What are the major parts of it only? And don't forget to look at the spaces in between to help you figure all that out and so forth. Okay, so draw through, draw over, draw on top of. When the lines are light, you can work it all out and practice those negative spaces. They are oh so helpful. Okay, is everybody ready? You can make notes now, starting with this point, because I got new stuff to say. Hopefully something I said there, the repetition of it, made it memorable, or the rephrasing of it made it memorable, or something I said that was goofy made it memorable, or whatever, because that's kind of what works. You know, it's something like that. One more thing to add to the mix, and you'll see why this makes sense, because I spent a bunch of time on that ellipse stuff, because this relates to this, and you'll see how these components of drawing all kind of fit together. You look at one thing really closely all by itself, but then you see how they interlock. Gesture, line weight, structural lines. Here's another, and it's called cross contour. And what I'll do is I'll show you the particular specific exercise for cross contour, but then the hope is that, like everything else, as you're shown, that thing, it just sort of moves into your perception arsenal and becomes part of your drawing. So hopefully negative space observation is now part of your arsenal. And let's add cross contour to that. Nothing like some vegetables. Nothing like some nice healthy produce. It's COVID times. I've been eating junk. You know, I've been eating terrible. Have to make an extra effort to try to eat better. But there's a day that I often do that won't be a whole day here. It will be a portion, but I call it volumetric veggies. And it's basically about practicing cross contour and learning how to follow the form. Because things have weight and things have mass and things have volume. Volume's the art term. You know, volume can mean lots of things. It can mean turning up your stereo, or it can mean selling lots of units, but in art it means three-dimensional mass, you know, and so forth. Not flat. Stuff looks flat, it doesn't have volume. So we have practiced contour, and that day I talked a lot about the virtues of varying your line weight and all of that, and how, and did everybody see the selections of nicely done contour drawings? I emailed them to you and then put them on Canvas, right? So you saw those, right? So it's that thing, you not only get to look at the answer sheet, you also get to look off other people's paper. So if somebody in your class is good, you get to look off their paper. You know, in a lot of other classes, that's cheating, but if you are looking at the exercises that somebody else, I mean, normally I'll say, hey, everybody get up, walk around the room. Let's see what everybody else is doing. Okay. But if I do a contour line drawing of an onion or something like that, I can suggest so much with just these outer contours, right? But how do I talk about all of this? Now, I see tons of surface details, and they're very, very useful. A little shiny highlight. So if I begin to do this, if I were to say to Mullen's student, I'd say, hey, why don't you now show me what's going on in there? And if I began to put lines that were like this onto my onion, it wouldn't be too hard to understand where I got them, because there is grain in how something is growing that kind of reflect that. But if I told you to tell me about the rest of it, that might be a reluctant thing to do. Meaning this, there is not literally a line around this part, right? But if I trace my finger around it, it has topography, it has relief, it has form, it's not flat. So cross contour exercises are these drawings where, in addition to what's obvious to do, you know, we grit our teeth and bite our lip and we make ourselves follow the form other ways. Some of the ways that it's described when we're doing it are, imagine that you're wrapping it with string. Imagine that you have to form this out of mesh, you know, in order to make a sculpture for it, or that kind of thing. So, and eventually I will get into sort of showing, I like to do this with the pepper. So we'll get Mr. Pepper out. Hello, Mr. Pepper. And, you know, what if I could add volume to something? What am I talking about? Okay, so if I do an outer contour drawing of this, which is an more easily understood sort of thing, and you run my eye along its exterior edges, you know, I'll quickly produce a drawing like so. It may be very nice, just like many of those contour line drawings of handbags were very nice. And I applaud some of the places where I saw my students seeing things that were inside on the form, and oh, this has folds, or this has wrinkles, or this has whatever, you know what I mean, and trying to get that information in there using the modified contour format. So what we do, you know, what if I took a pen and I wrote on this, you know, what would I get, kind of thing. And there's a way that I can actually use these kind of contour. I can actually like make nodules, and I can actually make by following the form and wrapping it and talking about how it turns in space and where it has, I can actually make it look more bulbous and round than it actually is. Do you see what I'm doing here? You see how I'm making this look sort of like, you know, if I stay away from the sort of center and I wrap around things, there's lots of analogies. There's lots of things we can think about. We can think about a globe. Yeah, I've got a map of the Earth, and it's a globe. And if I, you know, have a globe, the lines of longitude and latitude are not uniform. They, at some point, they're going to be there's going to be a greater distance, and it's going to be a little less as I go towards the edges, you know. So this is a way that I can actually add a sense of volume to something that is round. I also can just be reflecting with my marks the fact that I feel, you know, it's kind of the hokey things people say, like, oh, the artist feels the way this turns. Well, if I put my eye on this, it's my finger right now, but if I can if my eye can be the same thing, and I can feel how this turns around, and my marks reflect that, I can show that I am aware of that kind of volume and that roundness. But there are also ways in which I can contradict it, or I can kill it, because if I just put marks like this onto my globe, I can keep it flat, right? See how that's flatter than this? And I can come onto my onion over here, and I can put a mark like that, and that doesn't support the form at all. Does everybody see that? That's not saying this is, you know, that's not reflecting the form. If we cut a pipe, I always like to draw little goofy cartoony diagrams like this, but it's very helpful. If we cut a pipe and I go like this, and I keep reiterating this sort of thing, you know, that's supporting my form. But I can also have something like that, and I can put sort of half-hearted marks in it that don't do that, or I can even start going the opposite direction and create confusion, right? So there actually is a kind of mark that's not really like, you know, like I can go backwards onto my onion and say, you know, it's the opposite of saying like this is, of what this is doing. Like this is actually kind of correct, right? And that, what is that, right? So following the form, if I'm drawing, I'll make one up. I'll make up a fictitious one. I don't have an actual carrot here right now, but carrots also kind of have lumps and forms that sort of support what's going on, right? And if I'm drawing a carrot and I'm going like this, it'll make sense. But if I'm going along this way, which is the hard thing to do because I don't have sort of overt evidence of it, but if I trail it this way with my eye and I talk about that, I still have to not undermine what I'm doing. Like, what is that? You know, this happens all the time when we go to add additional information to things. If we just do it arbitrary, you know, it may not support the form at all. So like most things in drawing in which it's not, like this is kind of talking about, see how that's wrong, right? You don't want to do that. Most of the time, what's happening is not so much that we're doing something wrong, it's just that we're not doing the right thing enough. What am I talking about? Well, if I have a piece of fruit, here's another fictional piece of fruit. I guess I'm in the tomato. I guess I'm thinking tomato here. And, you know, I'm doing this kind of stuff, and I can be going like this and supporting that, you know, and making it more sort of like bulbous and so forth. But if I just go like this and there's not enough curve to my line and I just slam into the side here, that's not going to do what it's going to do if I really go around the curve with my marks and I really feel that this is round, you know. So cross contours like that, it's about really feeling, you know, and the more you do this loosely, you know, if I'm doing an ellipse loosely, I often can get more of a, when I finally commit to what I'm going to do, I can get a greater sense. And later on, you'll, when we introduce this thing, gesture will seem really closely related as well. So, you know, rather than creep along when I'm doing cross contour, I like to kind of keep it loose. And it's like, I want to tell myself that I can't go around that. I can't be too curvy. I can only be too rigid and flat, right? Because I'm trying to add volume and stuff. So what I usually do is I say, well, try when you're doing this stuff to exaggerate the truth. You know, see if you can't sort of make an even more voluminous, voluptuous, you know, curvy, whatever adjective works for you. Try to make, you know, your pepper, try to exaggerate its volume, not flatten it, because that's what the exercise is all about. You know, it's all about, and I tell you, when you, if you just look, because these terms, all these terms I've been giving you in this real sort of like tried and true academic instructional drawing stuff, like if you look up contour lines in a Google search, you're going to get lots of certain types of things, not just subjects that are hands or potted plants or shoes or handbags, but you're also going to see certain types of lines. And I can tell you that you'll get student work if you were to put cross contour into a search engine and get some of these kinds of things. You might see some of these where it's, yeah, that still looks a little flat. You know, it looks like kind of, there's a nice network of curved lines that are going both directions, not just the obvious one. But you may see examples that seem like better than others, you know, some that seem like it has more weight and volume than others. So moving along, I can only see some of you in the sidebar right now, but that's okay. Who's got, because you can use your voice too, who's got something healthy in the fridge?
Yeah.
Anybody? This isn't good. We could cross contour this, but I prefer, you know, organic things grown in the ground or on a vine or a tree or something like that. Has anybody got any vegetables or fruit? Anybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have some vegetables and fruit, it would be cool to just go ahead and go get something. Now, if you're like me, and there's a good chance that your house has, of course, I might have to go down a few floors to even get to the fridge, right? So that's too far for me because my back hurts or I'm lazy or something. But if you have something, if you don't have fruit or vegetables handy, you may find that just by looking around, you know, like this same thing that I had for structural lines we can cross contour that too. So see if you can grab something handy, because if you just look at forms, you may find something that has volume. It's great if it's organic. You know what it's like? It's like the human-made objects are often really great to study, because like if I can draw this thing, then I'm on my way to doing like cars and buildings and more complicated sort of objects. And the organic forms like vegetables and fruit, if I can draw those well, then I'm on my way to doing good faces and people and stuff, because we are organic forms. The simple, you know, at its most basic, there's, you know, we see say things like this, you know, for art school or for just, you know, I mean, like these most, we might add a cylinder, you know, but if we get something organic, like a sweet potato, and, you know, we say, well, Mullins, I understand why you say that, because your nose looks like a potato. Well, sure. But what I'm really getting at is that organic, this is a very sort of simple organic shape, but it's a fantastic one because it doesn't have, unlike the human eye, it doesn't have a lot attached to it. There's not a ton of symbolic kind of, there's not a lot of mythology and symbolism and all these kind of expectations of a potato. We just think like, well, there's a lump, and you know, it might have, the one way that I will let everybody know it's a potato is because I'll put those little things we call eyes, I'll put those little on there or whatever. But it, you know, it's just, it's a mass, you know, it's an organic mass. Okay. And it's a simple organic shape, and anything can be happening, and I turn it a different way and it looks different or whatever. But really, to talk about it, the best thing I can do is sort of try to describe, rather than the surface of it, which is all the stuff that would come off if I peeled it, is how does it turn in space, and what kind of, you know, and again, I'll do the kind of thing with the cross contour in which I kind of make it look exaggerated, you know, staying away from the knuckle, nodule, bulbous type things, and reflecting the form, just learning to make marks and do things when I'm drawing. These directional lines can support the form of something that is three-dimensional, is organic, has weight and mass, or I can, you know, harm that. What I mean, is everybody watching here? So I've got a potato, right? That doesn't help me, right? Unless I'm trying to say like there's a cut in it, or there's, you know, like that doesn't follow the form. This does not. If I just arbitrarily mark on it, doesn't necessarily help me. But if I feel, of course, I'm literally doing it now from any direction. It's like, it's about sort of learning to do that with my eye, right? So bananas can be terrific for this kind of stuff because they often have a place where it's like they have a seam. There's a place where you can see it's like one line, and just that. Everybody see that? You know, bananas have like a, you know, and what we call that in art, hey, you can get a sticker, right? And the way that I'll know that it's you is just put it in the chat. You know, just type it into the chat, because I can only see like a few of you in the sidebar in the screen view, but like just type it in to chat if you know the answer. So for a sticker, a term that can mean other things in other contexts, but in art, if I'm talking about the difference between this and this, I'm making some structural lines. See how that's a little too flat? I should curve that. Like that would be more true. But between this and this, it's like it's not really right to say sides, but that's probably what we'd say. We'd say like this side of the banana or that side of the banana, or right here. What I'm distinguishing between here and here with that is a difference between two what? What is the art term that we might use? Does anybody know? Type it into the chat if you know, or if you got a guess. You've seen what's up for grabs, right? You can get a Merv sticker, right? Who knows what's the term I'm messing, because it shows how we go from one thing into another. Because in my two little drawings here, we've basically got some, is the chat function even available on screen share? Or is it like the record thing that I was griping about earlier? You may have to say it verbally. I may be talking out of school, as they say.
I think it's on the top.
There are a lot of people who posted already.
Where is chat? Is it up there? Okay, well, when I get out of share, I'll see the chat, right? And we'll see what happens. Let me carry on with this for now. And I'm also doing a little change right now where I can see more of you. They're smaller rectangles, but I can see more of you in my sidebar. I'll check the chat. So here we've got going on in this drawing, we've got some contour. We've certainly got some cross contour if I start doing this thing, right? And I start saying what's going on in that regard. I did a lot of cross contour on this. We have some gesture, which I haven't taught at all yet, but that's in the future, so just so you know. And we're starting to talk about volume. And even like this that I'm doing, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I like that, because just like my diagram about the general before the specific and working from big to small, it's nice to do a little sort of like hint at things that will be in the next lesson or the lesson after that. So this is all in a nutshell about following the form. Follow the form. So that's the slogan, you know, along with general before the specific, no fear of the straight line. You know, all these kinds of things that I say over and over, and will continue to. One that I would extract from cross contour day would be follow the form. So if I am drawing from a clove of garlic, which is another good one for this kind of thing, you know, I might start drawing it. And remember earlier I was talking about how when you look at like one facet or one specific, like I'll show you the specific exercise for that facet. The specific exercise for contour is to do modified contour or blind contour, you know, exercises, right? The specific negative space exercise is that thing I showed you where you just draw the holes and the holes only, and you make a sort of reverse silhouette. The specific exercise for cross contour is to do these things that look like they are wrapped in string or something like that, right? In which you go all around the form. Now, of course, again, if you do a little searching around online, you might see cross contour examples that are okay, that look like kind of chicken wire, for lack of another term. But I like to throw it all together. So what you're seeing with the way that I'm drawing this right now loosely, which is kind of like bending together our structural lines and gesture. Okay, so I'm loosely doing this, because that's what happens is eventually it becomes reflexive, and you're not just doing an exercise, you're drawing something, and all the things that you've learned to do to help you see are come into play. And you sort of do something, you know, I gesturally cross contour, like, you know, will create a you know, and try to, the problem is, well, now I have to go this direction, and the thing itself doesn't have surface detail. You know, there's a grain on what we call the skin of the garlic that follows this way, but there's no overt evidence of how these nodules turn. But I can sort of indicate that I pick that up with my eye. You know, so I may not be doing something that's literal, but it's informing my seeing and it's informing my drawing, right? And if I wanted to get carried away, I might even be able to, you know, go overboard and pop one of those knuckles out more, depending on how much I talk about that and how I build this kind of stuff up. So I made jokes earlier about, you know, something like my nose and a potato, but I'm here to tell you that this kind of thing, it's a lot easier to draw a vegetable and to try to talk about a vegetable's topography. When we get on a face, my idea of what I expect a nose to look like will probably try to interfere with my accurate looking. It's a lot easier to look at a vegetable than it is a human face, and to talk about the masses and the lumps and the bumps and that kind of thing, which is what cross contour is all about. So adding cross contour into your repertoire uh, is a good thing. I think you're doing an 18 by 24 drawing of a still life. You're going to crop it in some way, right? I'm not going to get drawings that have you know, a medium size something in the center, a lot of empty space left over, because what you're going to do is consider your composition, do some thumbnails, and position it and crop it into your 18 by 24 rectangle, right? And then you're going to do a network of light structural lines all over the page, working the drawing together, all together at once. And then you're going to really look at those negative spaces before you get too picky on any one part or one thing. Use the spaces in between or around or behind to help you settle if stuff is right. You know, if I've got a banana in my still life setup, I may want to look here and here just as much, because if I only look at this edge on the positive itself, I may be missing it. And the second I look at this shape here as a shape, or this here as a shape, it may become clear that no, it's not that, it's this. And I'll just change it, right? I'll just revise it. I'll just make it the way that it is, because if I can see it and I can say it, I can make it so, because I'm the one driving this bus, this is not telling me what to do. And you'll all go through some sort of circumstance where it does. You'll be looking at your paper and something's not right, and you feel like you have to figure that out from the paper. Always remember to look at the subject. Always look at your still life more. The still life will tell you it's the answer sheet. What you already did on your paper is not the answer sheet. Okay, so remember that. Once you get something on the paper, don't fall into that trap where you stare at it in an evaluative sense and expect to figure it out. Go back to the still life and figure out what you've got on the paper that is different shape-wise than the still life, and you'll find it. But you'll never find it just looking at what you did on the page, right? Look hard at how things relate to other things. That is just as important as objects all by themselves. Resist the desire to finish an object all the way and then go to another object. Try to do all the big stuff and then go down to the medium-sized stuff. Well, how do I know when I'm ready to do that? You know, one thing that can be really good is to get up. Okay? Now, don't try to like make up your mind. If you get up you'll probably see something that you couldn't see when your nose was right close to it. You stand up, you push back your chair, you walk back a few feet, all of a sudden you see something that you did and it's not right. And you could not see that when you were really close to your 18 by 24 drawing paper because you're so close that you couldn't see that you missed, you know, a difference in scale, a difference in angle, something. It's like, no, that's not right. When you sit back down, make sure you get that answer from the still life, okay? Do not contrive or scheme up on your own what will fix it. You must do it by looking at the answer sheet, okay? So always remember that your still life is the answer sheet. But do not keep your nose 5 inches from your paper the whole time. I actually think it would be very good to work multiple sessions on this drawing. Like lay it out, do that network of structural lines, take a long time, stay in that place for a long time, and look at it from a distance. And then make some corrections and all that kind of, but don't expect to finish this drawing in one session. Like go away, do something else, get something to eat, come back another day, or come back later in the day, okay? And there is such a thing, you can get sort of fatigued and tired and all this kind of stuff and like not do the right things. And it's much easier, I think, to come back and stare at your still life for some information that you don't have is a much better thing to do than to stare at your drawing, trying to think about how good it is or not, you know, because we'll do that. We'll stare at our drawing, we'll look at our work, and we'll just like think only about how we feel about it or all these other things. And none of that is actually particularly productive. What is productive is to come back and imagine that you're always in the beginning, because the answer is always to do the same things like you did at the beginning, which is to look at the still life and find something, see it carefully, and duplicate that on your page, and then get your eye right back on your still life. Okay? So there's a lot of advice and there's a lot of tips and there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And I see it's just a little bit before 4. Okay, and we go to 5:30. So why don't we come back at 4:45? Okay, meaning you can stop your own video and you can just draw from your still life. If you need to come back into the room and ask me a question or show me what you're doing, just make some noise, right? Because even if I've gone to where it just says Paul Mullins, or if I've gone to the restroom, or I've gone, I'm around. So if you come back in with a question or you want a recommendation on work in progress, that's cool. Otherwise, put on some good music, give the still life your undivided attention. Remember everything that we're doing and don't do these other things, right? And work on your drawing. Don't expect to get it necessarily done. Expect to work on it again later, more. And at 4:45, I'm going to show you another thing for the sketchbook, okay? So everybody back in the room at 4:45, okay? Happy drawing, see you then.
You want us to work on the on sketchbooks like layout, or you want to work on the actual 18 by 32?
No, you're working on your 18 by 24 still life drawing. I'm going to show you something later for the sketchbook, but this is an 18 by 24 drawing. Fill up the whole page, right? Matter of fact, work out your composition, you know, and fill it in, right? Whatever composition you figure out, that's what's going on your 18 by 24 paper. And make sure you work on all the big stuff, right? So fill it up. Okay. I'll see you at 4:45.